Good evening. The European Council meeting finished a few minutes ago. Thank you for being here with us today for this one-day EUCO. Many topics on the agenda, as you know, so without further ado, I will leave the floor to the President of the European Council, Antoniu Kostas.
Well, dear Ursula, good evening to all of you. We have just concluded a productive European Council. We had very useful exchanges with President Volodymyr Zelensky and with the United Nations Secretary General Антониу Кошта, and the President of the European Commission presented to the leaders the white paper on defence. But today we focus mainly on our economic agenda, because that is the basis of Europe's prosperity, our citizens' prosperity. All member states, without exception, agree that we need to accelerate our economic agenda. And that is what the European Council did today by taking important decisions in three key areas: cutting unnecessary red tape, making energy more affordable for citizens and companies, and turning savings into productive investments. I want to thank Ursula von der Leyen and the European Commission's work in all these areas in the run-up to this European Council, and that work provided an excellent and indispensable basis for our decisions today. Today we agreed on clear targets, clear taskings and clear timelines. Through the reduction of bureaucracy by 25% for all companies and 35% for SMEs, we will make it easier for all companies in our economic space. Through measures to reduce energy prices, we help companies to be more competitive. Through the integration of our financial markets, business and citizens will get the funding for innovative companies. Business as usual is not an option, because as today, around 300 million euros of EU family savings flow out the European Union markets each year. There are 300 billion euros that don't fund business in the European Union. So today, we move forward on simplification, on energy costs, and on private investments. And our goals are clear: to create more jobs, more quality jobs, to strengthen fundamental industries like the automotive, steel and metals sectors, to make sure that Europe remains a continent of innovation and technological dynamism. Today we also recalled that all these efforts need to be pursued in line with the climate objectives we have jointly agreed to, because competitiveness and sustainability are fully compatible when done right. A sustainable economy is also a socially fair economy, an economy that leaves no one behind. That is why today we reaffirm our European social model and the importance of the European pillar of social rights. In a nutshell, prosperity, sustainability, fairness. On all of these, there are challenges, but also many opportunities. On all of these, Europe is taking decisions and moving forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, President von der Leyen. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Now it's only 2 weeks after we last met that you, Antonio, have gathered us here again today. I think it was a very productive meeting. We discussed indeed competitiveness, and I presented our competitiveness compass with a clean industrial deal. And we discussed the three important cross-cutting topics. The first is energy. The second is simplification, the famous omnibuses. And the third is the savings and investment union. And I think it was a very interesting debate because it was clear when looking at the energy prices that the main answer to reduce energy prices is to go more into the low-carbon energies, that is nuclear and renewables, because it is the fossil fuels that we import that are the price driver. The second point, the omnibus, indeed, strong support, not only to have one, but to have a whole fleet of omnibuses. And I want to reflect very briefly on the third element, the savings and investment union. Here is very interesting that we are in Europe world champion what savings is concerned. Per year, 1.4 billion euros are being saved, mostly on bank accounts, while in comparison, for example, the American households save 800 billion. And it is not the European market that benefits from being the world champion in savings, but it is mostly other markets, specifically the American market. Why? Because the European capital market is still fragmented, is complicated, and is slower. And the Savings and Investment Union has as a goal that the citizens get more and better return on their money, but also that the startups, the businesses have access to the much-needed capital. And the capital will go where the business case is. In other words, we have to make sure that this fragmented market turns into one savings and investment union with one set of rules where you can everywhere have the same entry point. This makes it then interesting to allocate the money here in the European Union, and this was one of the main focus in our discussion. Indeed, as you said, there's another point. It's not only the cross-cutting topics that we have been discussing, but we also look now systematically to one sector after the next. We started with the clean industrial deal, that is the energy-intensive industry and the clean tech industry. We have done the strategic dialogue with the automotive industry with an action plan. We've done the strategic dialogue with the steel industry, also with an action plan. And now the next one is the chemical industry that will follow. The principle is here that we are very clearly sticking to our goals, for example, climate neutrality by 2050, but that we accompany the sector on the way towards the goals to see where we can support, adapt, flexibilize, be better. This is a huge transformation that the sectors are undergoing, and therefore this is a journey that we're doing together. We have also presented the white paper on the future of European defence, and it was very good to have both discussions because competitiveness and defence are two sides of the same coin. If there were doubts about that fact until a few weeks ago, today none are left. Progress here is no longer a nice to have, but the discussions showed very much that progress here is an absolutely must. 2 weeks ago at the European Council, we reached a historic agreement to increase our defence capability and our defence spending, and to do it together. And today we presented the Readiness 2030 plan. In other words, we agreed on how to do the spending. First, we are activating the national escape clause because member states are ready to invest more in their own security. This activation of the national escape clause allows the member states to increase their defence expenditure without triggering an excessive deficit procedure. And the second leg is that we proposed a new instrument, we call it SAFE, Security Action for Europe. And here, of course, joint procurement and collaboration is the name of the game. So we want to spend more together, we want to spend better, and we want to spend more European. It is about financing this joint procurement from the European industry. Up to 150 billion euros in loan to member states are available for these defence investment. A final remark on that one, because Ukraine's security is also European Union's security, Ukraine and its amazing defence industry will be able to participate in the joint procurement in SAFE. But as Ukraine's security is not just European Union security, but the whole of Europe's security, we also will open the possibility to associate partner countries to join the SAFE programme. Finally, as you know, we will unleash the power of the EU budget, that those who want it voluntarily can flexibilise their cohesion funds for defence investment. And as I've just explained, we yesterday adopted the blueprint for a savings and investment union that closes the circle. We have not only discussed the savings and investment union with the competitiveness, but also here with the defence topic. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now we'll have time to take some questions. Tonight we have interpretation to German, English, French, Italian, Spanish and Dutch, so have your headset on hand in case it's needed. Please state your name and the media you represent before asking your questions. I'll go for Lawrence.
Thanks very much. Lawrence Norman from the Wall Street Journal. A question for each of you. For President Costa on Ukraine. We have seen a 40 billion plan from Mrs. Kallas come and go. We now have a 5 billion euro ammunition push that doesn't appear to have secured backing today, and we have growing doubts about how robust the European deployment of troops to Ukraine will be. Is Europe in danger of seeing its promises, its pledges to increase military support to Ukraine unravel? And a question for President von der Leyen. The Commission, I think, today extended by 2 weeks the decision to impose the first round of counter-tariffs against the United States. Was there any concern, and obviously that comes after the Trump tweet threats, was there any concern among leaders today, or are you concerned that by sending a signal to the White House that we are reconsidering, that Trump may think he can bully us into tariff submission? Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for your question. As I explained today, the Council was mainly about competitiveness, because how Ursula von der Leyen has said, defense and strengthen our economy are two sides of the same coin, and we need to boost our competitiveness and strengthen our defense hand in hand. Of course, we have a very good exchange with President Zelensky, and we reaffirm our full support to Ukraine. As you remember, we have our last two councils was dedicated on defense. The brainstorming day and last 6th of March, we have a discussion, and we welcome and approve the package proposed by the European Commission to increase our defense spending. And in this council, we decided in the conclusions to make the ramp up during the next 5 years in our own capabilities, but also to support Ukraine. And we, as the President of the European Commission just explained, all these instruments, the SAVE, more fiscal space, flexibilities on the use of cohesion funds, all of these give room to the member states to increase their support to Ukraine. Before this package, we have already a pledge of 15 billion euros from different member states. And now with these instruments, I believe that all the other member states or the different member states will increase their pledges to continue to support Ukraine.
On your question with the tariffs, I think it's important to highlight before I answer your specific question that we are in principle opposed to tariffs. We think that tariffs are bad. They are like taxes. They are bad for consumers. They are bad for business on both sides of the Atlantic without any question. We are in active discussion with the US administration on this issue. And I can confirm that we decided to adjust the timing of the entry into force of tariffs. The impact of our response does not change. That's very important because it covers measures up to 26 billion euros. That is the equivalent to the $28 billion that the American potential tariffs would impact on us. Our goal is, and this explains the postponement, to get the balance of products right, reflecting the interests of our producers, our exporters, our consumers, and of course minimizing the potential negative impact on our economy.
Okay, next question for David.
David Vidueiro, Radio Nacional de España, Spanish National Radio. My first question to President Costa in Spanish. Nueva cumbre, nueva unidad A26 sin Hungría. Parece ya la nueva normalidad aquí en Bruselas. Querría saber si no teme que estemos ante unos peligrosos precedentes que se repitan en el tiempo y que esto pueda ser un problema en otros futuros debates en los que sí necesitemos el visto bueno, la luz verde de Hungría. And two questions for President von der Leyen in English, yes. Spain and Italy don't feel comfortable with the name rearm. And with all this war narrative surrounding the plans, the Commission is aware of this discomfort of Spain and Italy, and it's maybe you are thinking about doing something about that, take any action to reassure them, Spain and Italy. And the second question, both countries want to make broader the concept of defense and include cybersecurity, managing of borders. Is the Commission open to this idea to include this concepts in your plans about defense? Thank you.
Yeah.
Vale, como sabes, la Hungría tiene una posición diferente de los otros 26 al respecto de cómo apoyar a Ucrania para obtener la paz. Pero tenemos que respetar su diferencia, pero no podemos nos quedar bloqueados porque Hungría piensa de una forma distinta de los otros. Lo tenemos que seguir haciendo y es lo que estamos haciendo. 2 semanas atrás habíamos aprobado conclusiones muy claras sobre Ucrania a 26. Hoy habíamos seguido el mismo método y así vamos manejando para nos quedar unidos, pero respetando las diferencias de unos y de otros.
So, to your question, the basis of the discussion today was the presentation of the white paper, and the white paper has a name that says it all, and that is Readiness 2030. It's a wider scope, of course. And in there is not only the funding, which includes, besides the national escape clause, of course, also the safe element. But the wider scope is, if you look at what do we finance with the safe instrument and the national escape clause, these are, for example, the priorities infrastructure, military mobility, of course the capability gaps from missiles to drones to artillery and other elements. And there is, of course, also included modern electronic warfare. This also includes the cyber element, but it includes the whole communication element, for example, too. So it's a much wider scope, the approach that we are taking, and therefore the name Readiness 2030. And actually, I think next week in college we will have the preparedness strategy, which shows also the second leg of Readiness 2030, that we have to be prepared for potential crises, also including, for example, natural disasters and other crises that we have to manage. So, indeed, we started relatively narrow, but now the concept has grown or matured to Readiness 2030.
Thank you. Virginie had a question.
Oui, bonjour, Virginie Malingre, Le Monde. J'ai une première question sur... je ne vais pas vous demander les financements innovants, le grand emprunt, tout ça, mais je voudrais savoir, il faut encore rembourser l'emprunt de NextGen 1. Vous avez un peu parlé de budget au moment du dîner. Avant d'envisager toutes sortes d'emprunts innovants, enfin de nouveaux grands emprunts ou de solutions financières innovantes, qu'est-ce que vous dites aux États membres sur les ressources propres, voilà, sur ce sujet-là? Et j'ai une deuxième question, plus pour vous, Monsieur Costa, sur la Hongrie. Vous dites, bah tout va bien, on est unis dans la différence. Bon, c'est pas grave parce qu'il n'y a pas de vote, ok. Mais combien de temps ça peut durer ce truc-là? Parce que c'est bizarre. Voilà.
So we had a very first discussion on MFF, so the next budget, and indeed the proposal will come in summer. But what we raised today was the awareness to the fact that today we have 1.2 trillion budget, 7-year budget, plus 800 billion Next Generation EU, and that has to be taken into account when designing the next MFF, that we have today a wider budget with which we can manage the many duties that we have to solve, or the many topics that we have to address with this budget. And yes, we discussed also the fact that when we have agreed on Next Generation EU, we also have agreed that we would come with new own resources for the Commission to pay back Next Generation EU over time. The proposal for the new own resources is on the table of the Council since 2021. So there was the acknowledgement in the European Council that it is high time now to start really working on that one, because this has to be clarified before we can engage seriously in discussions about the next MFF.
Bien, notre Union est composée de 27 États membres, 27 nations, plusieurs histoires, différentes cultures, différentes traditions, différents points de vue sur le monde. Donc, la diversité, ce n'est pas la nouveauté. Ce qui est nouveau, c'est qu'on arrive à avoir une position commune. Et ça, c'est l'histoire de l'Union européenne. Ça a commencé à 6, on est déjà 27, on est en train de nous élargir, et à chaque élargissement, ça devient de plus en plus défiante. Mais c'est ça, ce qui est très positif dans notre Union, c'est la capacité de vivre avec la diversité. Et j'ai vécu plusieurs années ici au Conseil européen. J'ai vécu plusieurs situations où on a été bloqué dans les décisions, plusieurs fois. Mais on a toujours trouvé une façon de surmonter les difficultés. On a parlé aujourd'hui sur le MFF. On a été ici, je crois, 5 jours, 4 nuits. Eh bien, finalement, on est arrivé à un accord et on est là. Donc, ça peut arriver. Il y a des moments où un État membre, d'autres 2 États membres. Le plus difficile, c'est quand on a 14 vers 13. C'est plus difficile. Mais vraiment, quand il y a 26 États membres avec une position et un seul pays avec une autre position, il faut le respecter dans son isolement, mais il reste isolé.
Okay, I have time for one more question for Andrew, please.
Thank you. Andrew Gray from Reuters. A question for each President. President Costa, just to come back to the question of aid for Ukraine. President Zelensky asked very specifically in his speech today for the European Union to provide €5 billion for artillery ammunition for Ukraine, which he says is urgently needed. The High Representative has made the same request. Did EU leaders agree to that request? Will the EU come up with that money for those shells? President von der Leyen You talked about the Readiness 2030 programme and the SAFE instrument within it. As you know, there's been a lot of controversy, particularly in the UK and partly in the US, on to the extent to which UK and US companies are excluded. Can you make clear if they are, in fact, completely excluded from participation? And if not, what conditions are required for them to take part?
Look, on Ukraine, then I believe that the President of the European Commission can give more details. But first, we have already ensured the support, the financial support and the military support for Ukraine during the year 2025. With with the package that the European Commission presented 2 weeks ago, we increased the room to maneuver for the different member states to increase their support to Ukraine. At that moment, at least 15 billion euros have already been pledged by the different member states, and they are working on to continue on this. And we continue to study other ways to increase our support to Ukraine. Then this is clear. Our support to Ukraine starts the day one of this war, and we will continue in the unwavering way until the end of this war. And after the war, we will continue to support Ukraine in peace securities, in peace guarantees, and most important, in the integration of Ukraine in the European Union.
So, indeed, thank you for the question, because it's important to sort out the different options that are there, and there are different options. We have two funding possibilities. The first is the national escape clause. On a member states level, they have more fiscal space, and with that they have to invest in defense, but how they invest in defense, that is their decision. And this is the bulk. This is 650 billion euros over 4 years, in the assumption that we will, on average, the member states will rise their defense investments by 1.5% of GDP. So that is massive. And then we have the SAFE program, loans, European common money, and should be jointly invested in European defense production, because I think it is of utmost importance that we develop the defense industrial base in the European Union stronger. So here too there are possibilities to participate. If we look at the product, there's the rule 65-35 that says 65% should be European local content, 35% can come from somewhere else. That is the possibility to participate. And there's even another possibility to participate if you are an associated country. So you have a partnership agreement in security and defense. Then you are not even restricted by this 35%, but you can participate even wider in that product. That's the product part. And then we have the business or the company part. Companies in Europe means they do not have to be owned by European. It can also be a subsidiary from a different company headquartered in the European Union. Why that? Because these are billions and billions of euros that we will spend. And we want a return on investment. And where they are spent, they will produce good jobs. They will initiate innovation, research and development, and this should take place in the European Union. Therefore, product and entity or company have the circumstances I've just described.
Okay, thank you very much. This concludes our press conference.
I forgot to say something. Sorry.
Please.
Of course, as I said, Ukraine is included in everything, and Norway, for example, as EEA country too. This is important. I always forget to say that because it's an automatism for me, but it has explicitly to be said. Thank you. Sorry.
Thank you. Have a good evening. Bye-bye.